I thought today would be a normal Monday. But the moment I stepped through the glass doors of Harrison Industries, I knew my life would never be normal again. Two small children, a boy and a girl, identical twins, were running behind me and suddenly grabbed my hand while shouting, "Papa's wife. Papa's wife is here." The entire office froze. Everyone stared at me as if I'd just detonated a bomb in the middle of the lobby. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. What is happening? My cheeks burned hot, and I could feel every single pair of eyes fixed on me. I jerked around to look behind me, and there he stood. Caleb Harrison, my boss, the CEO of the company. Tall, cold, devastatingly handsome, and always wearing that emotionless mask. His dark gray eyes were locked on me, but there was no reaction, just silence. A strange, suffocating silence that seemed to steal the air from my lungs. "Papa, you're late." The girl looked at Caleb and waved her hand enthusiastically. The boy squeezed my hand even tighter and declared, "We already found your wife. Look, he's perfect." I tried to pull my hand free, but these twins were incredibly determined, as if they knew I couldn't escape. Wait, kids. You don't understand. We know everything." The girl beamed at me, her brown eyes sparkling with mischief. "Papa told us you're really sweet. And you are. Even sweeter than he said." The ground beneath me seemed to shift. "Caleb told them about me?" I looked at him and our eyes met automatically. He still stood there with his hands in his pockets, acting like this was completely normal. But his eyes, they were saying something else. Maybe a warning. Maybe a challenge. Or perhaps something hidden that I couldn't quite understand. "Mr. Harrison," I said in a low voice, trying my absolute best to sound professional despite my racing heart. "I think there's been a serious misunderstanding." "There hasn't," he said in a flat tone and started walking toward me. Each step was calculated, like he was always in complete control. He stopped right in front of me, so close I could smell his expensive cologne, which overwhelmed my senses. My breathing pattern became erratic, and I struggled to keep myself steady. "My children don't lie, Julian," he whispered, just quietly enough that only I could hear. His breath was near my ear. "And neither do I. So let's not make this awkward." His words echoed in my mind over and over. What should I say? I'm just a junior marketing assistant, who's only been working at this company for 6 months. He's my boss. Untouchable, unreachable, and always distant. And now these twins think I'm his wife? This felt so unreal, like some kind of drama playing out. But it was real. Very real. And the worst part? The entire office was watching. Everyone in the office was staring. The gossip had already started. I could hear whispers coming toward me. "Did you see that? Is he really with the CEO? How did a junior assistant manage that?" My hands were trembling. I looked at the twins. Both were smiling at me, completely innocent and pure. As if they had no idea they'd just turned my entire professional life upside down, and possibly destroyed it completely. Caleb looked into my eyes for 1 second deeply, intensely, as if he was searching for something. Then he turned to the twins. "Go to my office. Now. Wait there." The twins immediately left, as if they were trained to obey. Caleb gave me one last glance, and in that glance there was so much I couldn't comprehend. Control, dominance, and maybe something soft too. "My office, 10 minutes. Don't be late." And in that moment, I knew, this has begun. Whatever is happening, it's not going to stop now. My hands were still shaking, and as I rushed to my desk, every colleague looked at me with strange expressions. I kept thinking, am I about to get fired, or is something else about to happen that will completely change my life? The walk to my desk felt like a mile. My coworkers quickly looked away when I passed, but I caught their expressions: confusion, curiosity, jealousy, and judgment. Sarah from accounting whispered something to Mark from sales, and both glanced at me. I sat down at my desk, trying to appear calm, but my mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts. What just happened? Why would those kids think I'm their father's partner? I'd barely interacted with them. Last week in the cafeteria, I'd seen them looking lost and confused. They'd dropped a bag and I'd simply helped them pick it up. I'd smiled, said hello, asked if they were okay. That was it, just basic human kindness. Nothing more. But apparently for them it was everything. I glanced at the clock on my computer screen. 7 minutes had passed. 3 more minutes until I had to face Caleb Harrison in his office. 3 minutes to prepare myself for what could be a termination, a reprimand, or something I couldn't even begin to imagine. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't keep me waiting. Of course he had my personal number. He was the CEO. He probably had everyone's personal information. I stood up, straightened my tie, took a deep breath, and headed toward the elevator. The ride up to the executive floor felt eternal. The elevator music, some generic instrumental piece, seemed to mock me with its calmness. When the doors finally opened, I stepped out into the sleek, modern hallway that led to the executive offices. Everything up here screamed wealth and power. The polished floors, the expensive artwork on the walls, the hushed atmosphere. Caleb's office was at the end of the hall. I could see his name on the door. Caleb Harrison, CEO. My hand hovered over the door, hesitating. Should I knock? This walk in? I checked my watch. Exactly 10 minutes had passed. I knocked. Come in, his deep voice called out. I opened the door and stepped inside. The office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture, a massive desk made of dark wood. And there, sitting on a leather sofa, were the twins, sipping juice as if nothing unusual had happened. They looked completely relaxed, content even. Caleb sat behind his desk, arms crossed, giving me that cold, analyzing stare that always sent a chill through me. His jaw was tight, and I could tell he was not pleased with the situation. Sit, he ordered, gesturing toward the chair across from his desk. I sat down, but I couldn't get comfortable. His presence was too overwhelming. The weight of whatever was about to happen pressed down on me like a physical force. I kept my eyes down, not daring to meet his gaze directly. Mr. Harrison, I genuinely don't know what happened today. I promise you I didn't do anything to— I know exactly what happened, he interrupted, leaning forward. His eyes locked onto mine, refusing to let me look away. My children think you're their father's partner, and they refuse to let it go. Trust me, I've tried to explain otherwise. I finally raised my eyes, utterly confused. But why me? I only smiled at them once. You smiled at them last week in the cafeteria, he said, and the memory came flooding back. Yes, I had smiled, just a polite gesture when they looked lost and confused. I'd said hello, helped them with their bag. That was all, nothing more. That's not enough reason to assume. For them it is. Caleb stood up and walked around his desk, leaning against it with his arms crossed. My heartbeat accelerated again. Why does he always have this intimidating effect on me? He towered over me, not just physically but with his entire presence. The authority, the control, the absolute certainty that he was always right. They've never had someone look at them the way you did that day, he continued, and there was something in his voice. Pain. Subtle, almost imperceptible, but there. Soft, warm, genuine, like they actually mattered to you. I glanced at the twins. They were watching me with such innocent smiles, completely unaware of the chaos they'd created. My chest tightened with an unfamiliar ache. Mr. Harrison, I said carefully, choosing my words, I understand they might be confused, but surely this will fade. Children forget things quickly. Not these children, he said sharply, cutting me off. Their mother abandoned them when they were 3 years old. They've been in boarding schools ever since. They don't trust people easily. But somehow, he paused, his eyes boring into me. Somehow they trust you. The weight of those words hit me hard. These children were motherless, alone. And I suddenly understood why they were so desperate to hold on to someone. Anyone who showed them even a moment of kindness. So what do you want me to do? I asked, feeling both confused and slightly defensive. Caleb looked directly into my eyes, intensely, as if he could see right through me. Pretend. What? I was shocked. What is he saying? Pretend to be their father's partner, just for 1 month, until they settle down and adjust to being home again. He paused, then added, I'll compensate you. Double your current salary for that month. My mind went blank. Is this man serious? You want me to fake being your boyfriend? In front of your children? Yes. And apparently in front of the office as well, he said dryly. The rumor is already spreading. We might as well use it to our advantage. That's insane. I stood up abruptly, but Caleb didn't even flinch. He remained exactly where he was, calm and collected. Too calm, as if he'd already planned this entire conversation. Julian, he said my name so softly that my heart skipped a beat. If you don't agree to this, I'll have to send them back to boarding school this week. And I don't want that. They just came home after 2 years away. I can't lose them again. Not when they finally seem happy. His eyes, for the first time, I saw something different in them. Helplessness. Desperation. He always appeared so strong and cold. But in this moment, he was just a father. A worried father who wanted to see his children smile. I looked at the twins again. They were both watching me with such hope in their eyes, as if I was their hero. Their eyes held such purity, such innocent trust. Something inside me broke. I was an orphan myself. I knew exactly what it felt like to lack parental love. Fine. I heard myself say, going against every logical thought screaming in my head. But only for 1 month. Strict deadline. And no one can know it's fake. Not even your staff. Caleb nodded. And for the first time, he seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Deal. I'll have my assistant draft a confidential contract. A contract? I repeated. You think I'd do this without proper paperwork? He almost smirked. I'm still a businessman, Julian. But as I left his office, I realized what I'd just done. I'd completely complicated my life. I'd just entered into a fake relationship with my boss. And the worst part, Caleb's eyes were still burned into my mind. Cold, yet there was something hidden beneath. Something that made my heart race in a way I couldn't explain. And that feeling, it terrified me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I couldn't focus on my work. Every time I tried to concentrate on the marketing campaign I was supposed to be developing, my mind drifted back to that office. Those twins, and most of all, Caleb's words. Pretend to be their father's partner. How exactly was I supposed to do that? What did it even mean? Hold hands? Go to family dinners? Attend school events? The contract he mentioned. What would it include? What were the boundaries? The rule. My phone buzzed. An email from Caleb's assistant, Miranda. Contract attached. Please review and sign by end of day. Confidential. Do not discuss with anyone. I opened the attachment with trembling hands. The contract was surprisingly detailed. It outlined exactly what was expected. Attend family dinners twice a week. Accompany them on weekend outings. Be available for school-related events. Maintain the appearance of a committed relationship in public and at work. The compensation was listed double my salary for 1 month as promised. There was also a strict non-disclosure agreement and a clear end date exactly 30 days from today. At the bottom, Caleb had already signed it. His signature was bold and confident, just like him. I stared at the document for a long time. This was real. This was actually happening. With a deep breath, I added my digital signature and hit send. Within minutes, Miranda responded. Mr. Harrison has been notified. He requests your presence at his residence tonight at 7 o'clock sharp for dinner with the family. Address attached. Tonight? Already? I wasn't prepared for this. I needed time to process, to plan, to figure out how to act around him and the twins outside of this office environment. But I'd signed the contract. I'd made a commitment. And despite my anxiety, despite my confusion, there was a small part of me, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, that was curious. Maybe even excited. What would Caleb's home be like? How did he act around his children when he wasn't being the cold CEO? Who was the real Caleb Harrison beneath that intimidating exterior? I glanced at the clock. 4 hours until 7. 4 hours to mentally prepare myself for stepping into a fake relationship with the most powerful, most intimidating, and yes, most attractive man I'd ever met. The twins appeared at my desk just before I was about to leave for the day. They'd somehow gotten past security and found their way to my floor. We're so excited for dinner tonight. The girl squealed, bouncing on her toes. Papa is making your favorite. The boy added confidently, even though Caleb couldn't possibly know what my favorite food was. How did you two get down here? I asked. Concerned. We told security we needed to see our papa's special friend. The girl explained innocently. They let us through. Of course they did. Who could say no to these adorable faces? Well, I'll see you both tonight then, I said, managing a smile despite my nerves. They hugged me simultaneously, one on each side, and my heart melted just a little bit more. These kids were going to be the death of me. The address Miranda had sent led me to an exclusive neighborhood I'd only seen in magazines. Massive estates, hidden behind tall gates, perfectly manicured lawns, and the kind of wealth that made my modest studio apartment seem like a shoebox. When I pulled up to Caleb's gate in my old sedan, I felt completely out of place. I pressed the intercom button, and immediately the gate began to swing open. As I drove up the long driveway, the mansion came into view, and my jaw literally dropped. This wasn't just a house. It was an architectural masterpiece. Modern, sleek, with floor-to-ceiling windows and clean geometric lines. It probably cost more than I'd earn in my entire lifetime. Before I could even park properly, the front door burst open and the twins came running out, still in their school uniforms, but with added grass stains and untucked shirts. "You came! You actually came!" they shouted in unison, racing toward my car. I stepped out, and they immediately grabbed my hands, pulling me toward the house with such enthusiasm I nearly tripped. "Careful, you two," I laughed, letting them drag me along. "I'm not going anywhere." Inside, the house was exactly what I'd expected. Elegant, minimalist, and somehow cold despite its beauty. White marble floors reflected the evening light streaming through enormous windows. Modern art hung on the walls, pieces I vaguely recognized from famous artists. The silence was almost eerie, with only our footsteps echoing through the space. But then I heard sounds coming from the kitchen: chopping, sizzling, the clatter of pots and pans. Curious, I let the twins lead me in that direction. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. Caleb Harrison, CEO of Harrison Industries, was cooking. He wore a black apron over his gray dress shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal surprisingly muscular forearms. His hands moved with precise, practiced movements as he chopped vegetables. And for the first time since I'd met him, he looked relaxed. Not the intimidating boss, just a father preparing a meal for his children. "You cook?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them, surprise evident in my voice. He glanced up, and I could swear I saw the corner of his mouth twitch, almost a smile. "Almost. The twins have specific dietary needs. Allergies and sensory issues. I can't trust just anyone to prepare their meals properly." "What kind of allergies?" I asked, genuinely interested. "Peanuts, shellfish, and artificial food coloring," he listed off matter-of-factly. "Plus, they're sensitive to certain textures. It's easier if I just handle it myself." The way he talked about his children's needs, so casually protective, so thoroughly informed, made me see him in a completely new light. This wasn't the cold CEO who intimidated everyone in the office. This was a devoted father who'd learned every detail of his children's requirements and took personal responsibility for their well-being. "Can I help with anything?" I offered. "Set the table," he said, gesturing to a cabinet. "Plates are in there. Silverware in the drawer below." Working together in the kitchen felt strangely domestic. The twins chattered constantly, telling me about their day at school, their teachers, their friends. I found myself genuinely engaged in their stories, laughing at their jokes, asking questions about their interests. When dinner was finally ready, we all sat down together at a large dining table that could easily seat 12, but felt oddly intimate with just the four of us. Caleb had prepared grilled chicken with roasted vegetables and homemade mac and cheese, apparently the twins' favorite. "This is delicious," I said after my first bite, and I wasn't just being polite. The food was genuinely excellent. "Papa is the best cook," the girl declared proudly. "Better than any restaurant," the boy agreed, stuffing his face with mac and cheese. Throughout dinner, I kept catching Caleb watching me, not staring exactly, but observing, like he was studying how I interacted with his children, how I reacted to different things, what made me smile or laugh. It was unnerving and oddly flattering at the same time. "Julian," Caleb said suddenly, pulling me from my thoughts, "the twins want to go to the amusement park this Saturday. You'll accompany us." It wasn't phrased as a question. It was a statement, an expectation. Typical Caleb. "Sure, I'd love to," I replied, because what else could I say? The contract clearly stated I needed to attend family outings. The twins erupted in cheers. The girl leaned over and kissed my cheek, while the boy squeezed my hand tightly. Something warm bloomed in my chest, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years, maybe ever. After dinner, the twins begged me to play a board game with them. Caleb excused himself to clean the kitchen, leaving me alone with the children. We played an intense game of Candyland, with both twins taking it far too seriously and arguing over the rules. No, you can't skip spaces. Yes, I can. The card says so. I found myself mediating their disputes, laughing at their competitive spirit and secretly enjoying every minute. These kids were special, smart, funny, and despite everything they'd been through, still capable of pure joy. When Caleb returned, he leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching us play. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Maybe satisfaction, maybe relief, maybe something else entirely. Eventually, the twins started yawning, and Caleb declared it was bedtime. They hugged me goodnight, long, tight hugs that made my throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "You'll come back, right?" the boy asked nervously. "Of course," I promised. "I'll see you both very soon." After Caleb took them upstairs, I waited in the living room, unsure if I should just leave or wait for him to return. The house felt different without the twins' energy, quieter, more intimidating. When Caleb came back down, he gestured for me to follow him outside. We stood on the front porch under the soft glow of the outdoor lights. The night air was cool, and I could hear crickets chirping in the distance. "Thank you," Caleb said quietly, hands in his pockets. He looked almost vulnerable standing there, without the armor of his office and his CEO persona. "For what?" I asked. "For showing up. For making them laugh. For not running away when they ambushed you this morning." He paused, then added, "It's been a long time since I've seen them this happy." Something shifted inside me. Beneath his cold exterior, Caleb Harrison was carrying so much pain, so much loneliness. He was a broken father trying desperately to hold his family together. "They're wonderful kids, Mr. Harrison," I said softly. "Caleb," he corrected. "If we're doing this arrangement, call me Caleb. At least when it's just us." "Caleb," I repeated, and his name felt natural on my lips, like I'd been saying it for years. He didn't smile, but something softened in his eyes. "Good night, Julian." "Good night." As I drove home, my mind was racing. This was supposed to be fake, a business arrangement, a contract, but the feelings developing inside me, the attachment to those children, the strange pull I felt toward Caleb, those were very real, and that terrified me more than anything. Saturday morning arrived with nervous anticipation coiling in my stomach. At exactly 9 o'clock, Caleb's sleek black car pulled up outside my apartment building. Through the window, I could see the twins already bouncing in the back seat, their excitement visible even from a distance. I grabbed my jacket and headed down, my pulse quickening with each step. When I slid into the front passenger seat, the scent hit me immediately. Sandalwood mixed with something expensive and distinctly masculine. Something that was becoming dangerously familiar. Something that was purely him. "Ready for chaos?" Caleb asked, giving me a sideways glance that almost looked like amusement. His lips curved just slightly. Not quite a smile, but close enough to make my breath catch. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to sound casual despite the butterflies wreaking havoc in my stomach. The amusement park was a riot of color and noise, completely opposite to everything Caleb represented. But today, he looked different. He wore a black Henley shirt that hugged his frame, dark jeans, and aviator sunglasses that made him look less like a CEO and more like someone approachable. Human, real, and devastatingly attractive in a way that made it hard to remember this was all pretend. "Papa, let's do the roller coaster first," the boy shouted, tugging on Caleb's hand with determination. "No way." "Ferris wheel," his sister insisted, pulling on my hand with equal force. Caleb looked at me with that barely there amused expression again. "Your call, Julian. Democracy in action." "Me?" I was surprised he'd defer to my opinion. "You're part of this now, aren't you?" His tone was casual, but his eyes held a seriousness that made my chest tighten. "They trust your judgment." I looked down at the twins, both staring up at me with expectant faces. "How about we compromise? Ferris wheel first to warm up, then the roller coaster. Sound fair?" "Deal," they chorused, and I felt a small surge of pride at successfully mediating their dispute. The Ferris wheel cabin was smaller than I'd anticipated. The twins sat between us, but the space was still tight enough that Caleb's thigh pressed against mine whenever the ride swayed. I was acutely aware of every point of contact. His body heat, the rhythm of his breathing, the subtle shift of his muscles when he moved. As we reached the top, the view stretched out before us, the entire city visible, the sky painted in shades of early evening gold and pink. Beautiful, isn't it? Caleb's voice was soft, contemplative. I turned to agree but found him looking at me instead of the scenery. His gray eyes were intense, focused as if I was the only view worth admiring. My heart stuttered in my chest. "Papa, why aren't you two holding hands?" the girl asked suddenly, her innocent question shattering the moment. Both Caleb and I froze. All the couples in the movies hold hands on Ferris wheels. Her brother added seriously, nodding with childlike wisdom. Panic flooded through me. I glanced at Caleb and he was already looking at me. Then, slowly, deliberately, he extended his hand toward mine, palm up, an offering, not a demand. Giving me the choice, I stopped breathing as I placed my hand in his. His palm was warm, his fingers strong with a slight roughness that suggested he did more than just sign papers all day. When he gently squeezed my fingers, electricity shot through my entire body. The twins smiled, satisfied with our performance. But Caleb and I just stared at each other, and in that moment, everything else blurred into insignificance. Was this acting? Or had it become something more? Later, as we sat eating ice cream on a bench, an elderly couple passed by and smiled warmly at us. "You two make such a lovely family. Those children are blessed." Caleb thanked them politely, his CEO mask slipping into place effortlessly. But I sat there speechless, that word echoing in my mind. Family. It hurt this time because I knew the truth. This lovely family was built on a lie, a contract, a temporary arrangement with an expiration date. As evening approached, we ended up at the haunted house attraction. The twins were terrified, clinging to both Caleb and me, as we navigated the dark corridors filled with jump scares and eerie sounds. Their fear was genuine, their trust in us absolute. They believed we'd keep them safe. When we emerged, a photographer approached with a camera. "Family photo? Complimentary for the day." I saw Caleb hesitate, his body language shifting into resistance mode. But the twins were already excited, bouncing on their toes. "Please, please, please." They begged in unison. We posed awkwardly at first. The twins stood in front, and the photographer gestured for us to move closer. "Parents, come together. Put your arms around each other." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Then Caleb's arm came around my shoulders carefully, tentatively, as if he wasn't sure whether this crossed a line. I wrapped my arm around his waist, and when the camera flashed, we were the picture of a perfect family. "Beautiful," the photographer exclaimed, printing the photo and handing it to us. "You can really see the love there." I stared at the image. We looked happy, natural, like we belonged together, and my chest ached with the painful reality that none of it was real. On the drive home, the twins fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the day's excitement. The silence between Caleb and me felt heavy, loaded with unspoken words and suppressed emotions. "Julian," he said finally, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, hands gripping the steering wheel with unusual tension, "you're really exceptional with them. Better than I could have hoped. They're easy to care for." I replied honestly, then realized what I'd said. Care for, not love. I'd caught myself just in time. "They worship you already. More than I anticipated they would." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was strained. "Sometimes I question whether this arrangement was wise." My heart plummeted. "What do you mean?" "They're becoming too attached," he said quietly. "And when this month concludes, it's going to devastate them." I couldn't respond because he was right. And worse, I was becoming attached to them. And maybe to him as well. Caleb suddenly pulled the car over onto a quiet side street. He turned to face me, and for once, his guard was completely down. Vulnerability shone in his eyes. "What about you?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Do you feel anything about this arrangement? About us?" His jaw clenched, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "That's a dangerous question, Julian." "Why?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. "Because," he said, leaning slightly closer, his voice dropping lower. If I answer truthfully, this arrangement won't remain fake, and I can't afford that kind of complication. My breath caught in my throat. His proximity, his voice, his eyes. Everything about him was drowning me. I wanted him to come closer. I wanted him, but suddenly he pulled back and resumed driving. "Good night, Julian." I got out of the car, but my heart remained trapped in that moment. What had he meant? Was he feeling what I was feeling? Later, alone in my apartment, I looked at the family photo. We looked so real together, and I realized with startling clarity I wasn't acting anymore. This had become real for me. At least it had for me. Monday morning shattered whatever peace I'd managed to find over the weekend. I arrived at work to discover chaos. Someone had sent an anonymous email blast to the entire company. Hundreds of employees. The message was vicious, calculated, and designed to destroy me. It claimed I was using Caleb for financial gain, that I was manipulating his children to secure my position, that I was an opportunistic predator taking advantage of a vulnerable single father. The email even included photos from the amusement park deliberately cropped and edited to look compromising, as if we'd been caught doing something inappropriate. Outside my cubicle, people weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. They whispered openly, their voices carrying, "Must be nice, using kids to climb the corporate ladder. How much do you think he's getting paid per night? Desperate single father, smart opportunist, match made in heaven." Each word felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I'd never wanted this. I just wanted to do my job, live quietly, stay invisible. But now I was the villain in everyone's story. The homewrecker, the gold digger, the manipulator. My hands shook as I opened my laptop. My inbox was flooded with messages. Anonymous, cruel, disgusting. Threats. Insults. Accusations. I closed my laptop and buried my face in my hands. This was too much. This was overwhelming. During lunch break, I escaped to the rooftop, desperately needing to be alone. I wanted to cry where no one could see, to fall apart in private. But when I pushed through the door, Caleb was already there. He stood by the edge, still in his perfect suit and tie, but his jaw was clenched tight. He was on his phone, his voice dangerously low. "I don't care who it is. Track them down. Now. And ensure they understand the consequences of their actions." He ended the call and turned to me. "You've seen it." It wasn't a question. My voice came out flat. Defeated. "The whole office has seen it. The whole company. I'm currently trending on the internal gossip platform. And I'm addressing it." He took a step toward me. "How?" I let out a bitter laugh. "By terminating everyone who forwarded that email? By pursuing legal action against anonymous accounts? You can't control what people believe, Caleb. The damage is already done." "No," he said firmly, moving closer. "I can't control their thoughts, but I can control what they understand about the truth." Then he did something I never expected. He placed his hand on my shoulder gently, carefully, almost possessively. The touch sent warmth flooding through me. "Despite everything, they're irrelevant, Julian. All of them. Only you matter." Tears welled up in my eyes. I tried to hold them back, tried to maintain some dignity, but I couldn't. "I never asked for this. I never asked to be humiliated like this. I never asked to become part of your complicated world, Caleb." "I understand," he whispered, his thumb stroking my shoulder soothingly. "But you're here now, and I refuse to let anyone harm you. Not while I'm capable of preventing it." His words broke something inside me. I looked up at him, really looked at him, and allowed myself to be completely vulnerable for the first time. "Why me, Caleb?" My voice cracked with emotion. "Out of everyone you could have hired for this, why did you choose me? You could have found someone professional, someone experienced." He met my eyes, and his answer was raw, honest, unfiltered. "Because you're the only person who made me feel human instead of like some cold machine everyone fears. You're the only one who made my children genuinely laugh. The only one who looked at us and saw people, not a business opportunity, not a power play, just people." Heavy, emotional silence filled the space between us. Then he added, so softly I almost missed it, "And perhaps, you're the only one who made me want to feel again. To try again." My heart simultaneously shattered and healed in that moment. This was real. Not fake, not contractual, just truth. "Caleb, Stay here, he interrupted. I'm going to handle this the right way. What are you planning to do? I asked nervously. What I should have done from the beginning, he said, determination blazing in his eyes. I'm making it crystal clear that you're under my protection, and anyone who targets you targets me directly. He left, and I stood there alone, confused and frightened about what he intended to do. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A notification from the company-wide group chat. Emergency meeting. Conference hall. Immediately, when I arrived downstairs, the entire company had already assembled. Everyone was whispering nervously, and at the front of the room on the stage stood Caleb, microphone in hand. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were dangerous. I'll be brief, he began, and the entire hall fell silent. A malicious email has been circulating regarding my personal life and Julian Carter, one of our employees. I stopped breathing. He was saying my name publicly? Let me be absolutely clear, Caleb continued, his voice radiating pure authority. Julian is someone I personally trust, someone my children trust, and someone who has demonstrated more integrity in 6 months than most people show in their entire careers. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Shocked faces turned toward me. The email was fabricated, a malicious attack designed to harm someone who doesn't deserve it. Caleb's voice hardened. Human Resources has traced the source. The responsible party is being terminated immediately and will face legal consequences for defamation and harassment. Gasps echoed through the hall. Someone was actually being fired. Furthermore, Caleb continued, and then, he looked directly at me. Publicly, Julian is under my personal protection. Any additional harassment, any gossip, any attempt to create a hostile work environment for him, will be treated as a direct attack on me personally. And believe me, you don't want that. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. This company operates on professionalism and respect, Caleb concluded, not on petty gossip and cruelty. Anyone uncomfortable with that standard can submit their resignation. Meeting dismissed. Complete silence. Then people began dispersing slowly, everyone shocked and subdued. I looked at Caleb as he descended from the stage. When our eyes met, he gave me a subtle nod, as if saying it's finished. Later, when the office had mostly emptied, I went to his office. He stood by the window, tie loosened, looking exhausted. You didn't have to do that, I said quietly. Yes, I did, he replied without turning around. Nobody harms what belongs to me. What belongs to you, I repeated, confused. He turned, and the intensity in his eyes took my breath away. Do you still think this is just an arrangement for me, Julian? He asked slowly, walking toward me. Do you think I'm still just acting? Still pretending? I don't know, I admitted honestly. Caleb came dangerously close. Then allow me to clarify. He cupped my face in his hands, gently, carefully, as if I was something precious. This stopped being fake for me weeks ago. Maybe even earlier. I don't know exactly when, but I know that when I see you with my children, when I see you smile, when I see anyone trying to hurt you, he paused. I want to protect you. I want to keep you. I want you to be mine. Genuinely. 3 weeks had passed since the contract began. Only 1 week remained, and my heart already ached with the approaching end. The twins had become part of my daily routine. Morning video calls before school, lunch visits with drawings they'd made for me. Weekend outings to parks and museums. Caleb had become more complicated, professional in the office, but around his children, something softened in him, and that softness, that vulnerability, it seemed directed at me. But I was terrified, because I'd realized the truth. I was in love with those children, and maybe with Caleb too. Real deep, terrifying love that made my chest hurt because I knew it had an expiration date stamped on it. On the last Friday evening, Caleb invited me to his house for dinner. Final official family dinner according to the contract, he'd said formally. But something else lurked in his eyes. I arrived with a heavy heart. The twins were excited as always, but both Caleb and I were unusually quiet, as if we both knew that tonight marked an ending. Dinner was subdued. Even the twins seemed to sense something was wrong. They were quieter than usual, exchanging worried glances between bites. After they went to bed, Caleb asked me to join him on the terrace. The city lights sparkled below us and the night air carried a chill that made me shiver. I stood by the railing trying to memorize this moment, knowing there wouldn't be many more like it. The contract expires tomorrow, Caleb said quietly, standing beside me with his hands in his pockets. I know, I whispered. The twins don't know yet. I haven't found the words to tell them. How will you explain it? I asked, my voice cracking slightly. I don't know, he admitted honestly. I don't know how to tell them that the person they've come to love is leaving. Tears filled my eyes. I never wanted to hurt them, Caleb. I swear I did. I know. He turned to face me. This isn't your fault. It's mine. I brought you into their lives knowing this was temporary. I just never expected what? I looked at him. That I'd fall for you, he confessed rawly. That I'd want this to become real. That I'd lie awake every night thinking about you, wanting you, needing you in ways I haven't felt in years. My heart stopped beating. Caleb, I know it's unfair, he continued, stepping closer. I know I'm your boss. I know this started as a transaction. I know there are countless reasons why this shouldn't work. But Julian, he took my face in his hands. I can't let you go. I can't return to pretending you don't exist. I can't watch you walk away without telling you the truth. What truth? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. That I love you, he said clearly, firmly. I love how you make my children laugh. I love how you look at me like I'm more than just a cold CEO. I love how you've transformed my house into a home. I love you, Julian. Completely, desperately, and I know it's terrifying and complicated and possibly the worst timing imaginable. But I kissed him. I couldn't help it, couldn't hold back anymore. I pressed my lips to his, and in that moment, everything clicked into place. Caleb responded immediately, wrapping his arms around me, pulling me closer, kissing me back with equal desperation and hunger. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathless. I love you too, I confessed, my voice shaking. I've been terrified to admit it. Terrified this was one-sided. Terrified I was just convenient. But Caleb, I love you. I love your children. This house, this life, everything. He pulled me into a tight embrace, burying his face in my neck. Then stay. Not because of a contract, not because of the twins, but because you want to. Because we want this. Genuinely. What about the office? The gossip? The complications? I raised practical concerns even as my heart screamed at me to just say yes. I'll manage it, he said firmly. I'll transfer you to a different department if necessary. Eliminate the reporting structure. We'll do this properly, correctly. But Julian, he looked into my eyes. Please don't leave. Please give us a real chance. I studied his face, vulnerable, hopeful, scared, exactly how I felt inside. Okay, I finally said. Okay, I'll stay. For real. No contract. No pretending. Just Caleb breathed out in relief and kissed me again. Slower this time, deeper, filled with promises and future possibilities. The next morning, Saturday, when I arrived to officially move in, Caleb had insisted. The twins greeted me at the door, their faces bright with excitement. Are you staying forever now? The girl asked innocently, hope shining in her eyes. I looked at Caleb, who stood behind me with his hand resting on my back. He smiled, a real, warm, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Yes, I told the twins, I'm staying. For real. Forever. They screamed with joy and threw themselves at me, hugging me tightly. And standing in that doorway, with Caleb's hand warm on my back and his children surrounding me with love, I realized something profound. I'd finally found my home. I'd finally become someone's person. I'd finally found a family who would fight for me, who would love me unconditionally. And it was all because of Caleb, the supposedly cold boss who wasn't actually cold at all, who had a soft heart he protected fiercely but had opened up for me. Welcome home, Julian, Caleb whispered, kissing my temple gently. Home, I repeated, and the word finally felt right. Finally felt complete. Because I'd come home. And this home, this family was now permanently mine. Not because of a contract or an arrangement, but because we'd chosen each other. Because love had grown in the most unexpected place, in the most unexpected way. As the twins pulled me inside, chattering excitedly about which room would be mine and how we'd decorate it together. I glanced back at Caleb. He stood in the doorway, watching us with an expression of pure contentment. This was real. This was forever. And I'd never been more certain of anything in my entire life. The contract had ended, but our story, it was just beginning.